the fluorescent lights of the Sterling Industries. Headquarters cast long shadows across the marble floors as Marcus Webb pushed his industrial mop down the executive corridor. It was 11 p.m. and the building was silent, except for the rhythmic swish of water and the distant hum of the HVAC system. Most people never noticed him. To them, he was just another janitor in navy blue coveralls, invisible in plain sight. But Marcus didn't mind. He had long ago learned that dignity wasn't determined by your job title, and besides, this night shift paid enough to keep a roof over his daughter, Lily's head, and food on their table. That's all that mattered. He paused at the window overlooking the city, its lights twinkling like earthbound stars. Somewhere out there, people were living their glamorous lives, attending dinner parties, closing million-dollar deals. Marcus's world was smaller, simpler, and he'd made peace with that. He was 28 years old, and life had already taught him more lessons than most people learn in a lifetime. When his wife walked out 3 years ago, leaving him with a 4-year-old daughter and a mountain of unpaid bills, he could have crumbled. Instead, he stood taller. The sound of muffled crying snapped him from his thoughts. Marcus froze, his grip tightening on the mop handle. The executive floor should be empty at this hour. He tilted his head, listening. There it was again, a soft whimpering coming from the women's restroom down the hall. Every instinct told him to call security, but something else, maybe it was the father in him, urged him forward. "Hello?" he called out gently, pushing the restroom door open. "Is someone in here? Are you okay?" A small hiccup echoed from the last stall, and then a tiny voice. "I want my daddy." Marcus's heart clenched. He recognized that fear, that vulnerability. It was the same tone Lily used when she had nightmares. He crouched down and peered under the stall door. A little girl, no more than 6 years old, sat huddled against the wall, her knees pulled to her chest. Her designer dress was wrinkled, her patent leather shoes scuffed, and her face was streaked with tears. "Hey there, sweetheart," Marcus said softly. "My name is Marcus. I work here. Can you tell me your name?" The girl sniffled, her bottom lip trembling. Emma Sterling." The name hit Marcus like a freight train. Sterling, as in Richard Sterling, the CEO of this very building, as in the man whose face was plastered on business magazines and news channels. Marcus had seen the frantic emails on screens throughout the building. Earlier that evening, something about the CEO leaving an important meeting abruptly. Now he understood why. "Emma, your dad is looking for you, honey. The whole building is. How did you end up here?" Through her tears, Emma explained that she'd been visiting her father for Bring Your Daughter to Work Day, when she'd wandered off, gotten turned around, and ended up in the executive wing. When she'd heard footsteps and voices, she'd hidden, too scared to come out. Marcus extended his hand through the gap under the stall. "I have a daughter about your age. Her name is Lily. You know what she tells me when she's scared? She says, 'Daddy, brave isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing the right thing anyway.' Do you think you can be brave with me?" Slowly, Emma's small hand reached out and grasped his fingers. The stall door unlocked and she emerged, throwing her arms around Marcus's neck. He lifted her gently, feeling her shake against his shoulder. For a moment, he was transported back to those nights when Lily woke from bad dreams, needing nothing more than to know someone was there. "Let's get you back to your dad, okay? I bet he's really worried." As Marcus carried Emma toward the main security office, his mind raced. He could just drop her off and disappear back to his cleaning duties. That would be the easiest thing. But looking at this scared little girl, he couldn't bring himself to hand her over to strangers, even security guards. She needed to feel safe. The security office erupted when Marcus walked in with Emma. Within minutes, Richard Sterling burst through the doors, his expensive suit disheveled, his normally composed face etched with raw panic. When he saw his daughter, he let out a sound that was half sob, half laugh, rushing forward to scoop her into his arms. "Emma, oh God, Emma!" He pressed his face into her hair, his shoulders shaking. I was so scared." "Daddy, this is Marcus," Emma said, her voice muffled against her father's shoulder. "He saved me. He was really nice." Richard Sterling looked up then, really seeing Marcus for the first time. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Marcus saw not a powerful CEO, but simply a father who'd almost lost his child. He saw his own reflection. the fear every single parent carries buried deep in their bones. "Thank you," Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. I can't find words big enough. Thank you for finding her, for staying with her." Marcus nodded, uncomfortable with the attention. "Anyone would have done the same, Mr. Sterling. I'm just glad she's safe. I should get back to my work now." He turned to leave, but Richard's voice stopped him. "Wait, please, what's your name?" "I'd like to properly thank you. Marcus Webb, but really it's not necessary. Just doing what's right." Over the following week, Marcus tried to put the incident behind him. He showed up for his shifts, mopped the floors, emptied the trash bins, and went home to Lily. But Richard Sterling couldn't stop thinking about the janitor who'd comforted his daughter. He asked questions, learned about Marcus's story, his struggles as a single father, the way he worked nights so he could be there when Lily got home from school. And then Richard made a decision that would change everything. "Mr. Webb?" The voice on Marcus's phone was professional, crisp. "This is Catherine from Mr. Sterling's office. He'd like to meet with you tomorrow at 10 a.m. He has a proposition for you." Marcus's stomach twisted. Had he done something wrong? Was he being fired for some protocol he'd violated? He arranged for a neighbor to watch. Lillian showed up the next morning in his only dress shirt and tie, feeling completely out of place in the gleaming executive suite. Richard Sterling stood when Marcus entered, extending his hand. "Marcus, thank you for coming. Please sit." What happened next stunned Marcus into silence. Richard explained that in the aftermath of Emma's disappearance, he'd realized how disconnected he'd become from his own company, his own family. He'd been so focused on profits and growth that he'd forgotten about the people who kept his business running, people like Marcus who worked thanklessly every night. "I want to offer you a position," Richard said. "Not out of charity, but because I believe character matters more than credentials. I'm creating a new role, Director of Employee Relations and Wellness. Someone who understands what it's like to struggle, who sees the people others overlook. The salary is $95,000 a year, full benefits, college fund for Lily, and flexible hours so you can be there for your daughter." Marcus couldn't breathe. Numbers swirled in his head. The relief of paying bills on time, the possibility of a better apartment, the security he'd been chasing for years. But there was something else, something deeper. It was the recognition that kindness had value, that being a good person mattered. "I don't have a college degree," Marcus said quietly. "I don't have management experience. You have something more important. You have empathy. You have integrity. Those can't be taught in any university." Richard leaned forward. "That night you could have just called security and walked away. But you didn't. You stayed with a frightened child because it was the right thing to do. That's the kind of person I want representing my company's values." Tears blurred Marcus's vision. For so long, he'd felt like he was treading water, barely keeping his head above the surface. Now someone was offering him a lifeline, not as charity, but as genuine respect. "Yes," Marcus whispered. "Yes, I'll take it." The transformation wasn't instantaneous. Marcus had to learn, to grow, to prove himself in ways that had nothing to do with that one night. But he did it, implementing programs for working parents, advocating for fair wages for the night staff, creating support systems for employees struggling with childcare. He brought humanity back to a corporation that had forgotten what that meant. Years later, when Lily graduated, high school at the top of her class, with a full scholarship to engineering school, both Richard and Emma Sterling sat in the audience cheering. The two families had become intertwined, bonded by one night when a janitor chose compassion over convenience. As Marcus watched his daughter accept her diploma, he thought about how life's most profound moments often come when we least expect them. How a simple act of kindness can ripple outward, changing not just one life, but many. He'd taught Lily that success wasn't measured in titles or bank accounts, but in the lives you touch and the difference you make. That night, pushing a mop down a corridor, he'd just been doing what felt right. He hadn't known it would change everything. But perhaps that's the secret the universe whispers to those willing to listen. When you choose kindness, when you choose to see another person's humanity, you don't just change their world, you change your own. And sometimes, in the most unexpected moments, the world reaches back and embraces you with opportunities you never dreamed possible. Not because you asked for them, but because you earned them with nothing more than a good heart and the courage to care. when it would have been easier to look away,